Hi everyone. Thank you so much to all of you out there who are watching this. I really appreciate you sharing with me that you would be interested in learning more and hearing more about my pregnancy journey, postpartum journey, and then leading up to some exciting new things that I'm about to adventure out on. So yeah, this is just going to be a very honest time for me to just share a little bit of who I am and some experiences that I've gone through in the last 25 months, in hopes that, it may help someone, or there's some relatable experiences there, and that really good things can come from trials and difficult times. I do have some notes to help guide me, so sorry if I from time to time look over. Like I said, this is new and a little awkward for me. I do want to say ahead of time that if any of you are currently pregnant or have a past of a difficult pregnancy, some of this may serve as a trigger for you. I know that I've had to learn, what kind of triggers me and possibly causes some anxiety within my own life. And so I'm going to try to be as vulnerable and real and honest as possible, but I also would never want what I'm sharing or my experiences to cause painful memory or fear for any of you out there. So please do not feel obligated to watch this, or fast forward through a little bit of it if you need to. So yeah, I'm Lauren. A lot of you know me personally. Some of you were just Instagram friends, and so I appreciate all of you following along with my life and the life of my family, and from time to time during different seasons of life just being super supportive and encouraging. I grew up in North Carolina. There's a little bit of an accent still there. I've lost a lot of it. My husband Caleb and I have been married for 5 years. We live in Orlando, and we have a 20-month-old, that's crazy, twin boys, Ash and Ames. So a lot of this is going to be about our experience of being pregnant with them and bringing them into the world, and just what that road looked like for us. So to start off with a lot of same question that I get, twins are in my family. Thankfully we didn't have to have treatments, that we didn't get twins through IVF or anything like that. Twins are in my family, and I just was the lucky one who got the gene passed down to me. And so yeah, Ash and Ames were considered die twins, meaning separate sacs, separate placentas. My doctor loved to remind me that it was like 2 whole pregnancies happening at one time. So I got very large. But yeah, fraternal twins, so they say. Yeah, and we were super excited about twins. Caleb more excited in the beginning than I was, honestly. It just freaked me out. But now wouldn't have it any other way. We even jokingly say that if we were to have more kids, we'd love to have twins again. It's all we know. So yeah. But a lot of this starts with my pregnancy. And so at 14 weeks, I went for just a routine ultrasound and appointment. Found out that I had a condition known as placenta previa, which on its own really is not a big deal as far as I know. My doctor didn't even go over any specific concerns about the previa. She told me, worst case scenario, if we get to like 27 weeks and the previa hasn't moved up, then you'll have a C-section. And so to give a little information about placenta previa, I had, again, 2 placentas because of the die twin pregnancy. And so baby A, that was Ash, on the bottom, his placenta at the time was partially covering my cervix. And typically the placenta is able to move up as the babies grow, because as they're growing and your belly's growing, things just move along. So she just told me you have a previa, and worst case scenario, you end up having to have a C-section, which I didn't think was that bad of a deal anyway. And so didn't really think much about it. And I remember saying in those, first few months of pregnancy, oh my gosh, if this is what being pregnant is like, I could be pregnant all the time. I loved it so much. But then at 21 weeks, right at 21 weeks, I was a middle school teacher, and so I was at school one day and had done quite a bit of walking that day, just to and from places around campus with my students. And I called Caleb about midway through the day, and I was like, I just don't, I don't feel right. And he encouraged me to go home right after school and just rest, put my feet up. Well, I didn't listen. I went to the grocery store and ran errands and came home and cooked and straightened the house. And around 8:30 that night, just was worn down, and so I decided to get in the bathtub. And because I was already pretty large at this point in time, Caleb had to help me get into the bathtub. And when I went to step into the tub, blood just started running. Running's not even an accurate word. Flowing down my legs. Yeah, terrifying. I don't even remember saying anything. Caleb just held onto my hand and he said, okay, we're going to get clothes on. We're going to go to the hospital. We're going to be fine. He was so calm. And all I could think about was obviously a miscarriage. I feel like that's a lot of what's associated with having a miscarriage is bleeding. Longest drive to the hospital ever. So we get checked in. They examine me and check everything out. And long story short, the bleeding was due to the previa. And so apparently, worst case scenario of a previa is if it doesn't start to move and it stays in the same position, all of the weight of the baby is pushing on it and can cause it to tear and then bleed. And so that it was the placenta that was causing the bleeding. And again, they didn't make it out to be a huge deal. They said, you do need to stay here. We're going to monitor you for 48 to 72 hours. And if things kind of get under control, then you'll be good to go home. Well, things didn't get under control, and I continued to bleed, and I bled more each time that it happened. And so we were then told that I would be living at the hospital until the boys were born. And at this point in time, at 21 weeks, we thought that they would be coming very early. I think the hardest part about that was I'll never forget this woman's face. They sent a nurse from palliative care to come and speak to us, and she had a folder full of all of these papers that we had to attempt to understand and sign about if the boys did come that early. It's not considered a viable pregnancy at that point. And so if they were delivered and they were actually alive, what decisions would we make about their life? So really difficult conversation to have, one that I wouldn't wish on anyone. So we made decisions. I remained in the hospital, strict bed rest. In those early days, I was told when I could use the bathroom. I remember going days without taking a shower. Just laying on my back, strict bed rest all day long. You're having so many thoughts going through your head about you have a whole life back home. You have animals to take care of. I had a job that I ended up having to step away from because it was unrealistic for me to think that I was going to be able to go back that year. Caleb still having to work and provide for our family and keep the house up here and make sure animals are taken care of. And we didn't have a nursery ready. We didn't have car seats. I had had my shower back home in North Carolina, but we, didn't have a lot of our baby items yet, and just a whole whirlwind of things that you just don't expect to happen. And so as time went on, my body kind of got it together, and the bleeding stopped, and they would continuously monitor me, and the boys always did so great. They were so big and so strong and just fighters. It was my body that was having a hard time. The boys were doing great. So yeah, the hospital became my home. I remember it was around fall time of year, and so I had some of the sweetest friends help decorate the room for me, and my mother-in-law stayed with me every day, just because I was terrified to be by myself. And then as time went on, my body continued to get better, so we thought. And so after being there for about 3.5 weeks, they actually let me go home. I was still on strict bed rest at home, so that circumstance didn't change, but at least I was in my own house. And I didn't make it very long at home before issues came about again. So back to the hospital we went. Same thing, strict bed rest. Wasn't really even allowed to be wheeled around in a wheelchair to go outside or get a break. Just a really lonely and terrifying time. Very humbling. I mean, Caleb had to fully physically take care of me. I wasn't able to bathe myself. I had to have help getting to and from the bathroom. That'll bring you really close in your marriage. So yeah, just a really, really hard time. And long story short, I ended up towards the end bleeding a lot, to the point where through ultrasound they realized that my previa had resolved and I didn't have it anymore. And so there was concern there for, why are you still bleeding so much? And it was found out that I now had a placental abruption because of all the trauma done to the placenta during the time of the previa. And so there were tears all through the placenta, which was causing me to bleed, ran the risk of me hemorrhaging if I were to go into labor. And I did go into labor. At the very end of 32 weeks, I ended up being in labor for 3 days. I went into labor on a Sunday, and the boys were born on a Wednesday. And so that was a crazy string of events, and I know that they were trying so hard to just get the boys to stay in as long as they could. I mean, every day, when you know that you're going to have premature babies, every day makes the biggest difference. And so I was getting all sorts of medication. I don't even remember a lot of this because I was just out of it. Not really eating. And maybe TMI, but here I am being vulnerable and honest. I was bleeding so heavily that I couldn't wear underwear. They were having to put bath towels between my legs and changing them out every hour. And I just remember thinking, because the boys were fine the whole time. They were never in distress. Their heart rates were never high. Their heart rates never dropped. They were just, holding it down in there. There was a lot of talk in the background about, obviously, as they should be, babies are the priority, and we're going to try and keep you from hemorrhaging and all of that. But I was just terrified that I wouldn't make it. And after the boys were here, and after a few days, the doctor ended up telling Caleb, we didn't realize that it was as bad as it was. So 3 days of labor and lots of just trauma to my body and ended up having an emergency C-section. The moment that they cut into me to pull Ash out, baby A, the placenta completely exploded. It just fell completely apart. And so I'm so thankful that they got in when they did and that things ended up being okay, because that is a very dangerous thing to have happen. And then from that point on, the next, I would say, 2 or 3 days are a total blur to me. I see pictures, you know, in the operating room, and there are pictures of Caleb putting the boys on my chest, but, you know, your arms are strapped down. I was very, like, the anesthesia, made me super nauseated, and so I was really sick and just out of it already from all of the blood loss. And so the first 3 days, I don't even remember meeting my babies for the first time. I don't remember holding them for the first time. I made a post to social media the day after they were born announcing that they were born, and the post is coherent. It makes sense. I do not remember posting it. I don't even think I texted my friends, my closest friends, to tell them that the babies, like, I don't know where my mind was, but I have no memory really of any of that. And that's been a hard thing, that you don't remember your babies being born. You don't remember holding them for the first time, remembering, you know, what they looked like in that moment. So there's been a lot just to mentally process. But the boys were born at 33 weeks, so 7 weeks early, weighing 5 pounds 8 ounces and 5 pounds 9 ounces. They were big boys. I mean, that's big for full-term twins. And I know that it's because I was on my back for 13 weeks, eating, having no activity, getting steroid shots and all sorts of things to boost their growth and their development, and I was just packing the pounds on. And that's okay, because I had healthy babies and they were worth that 100 pounds almost that I gained. But because they were so early, they were in the NICU. Another really hard thing, I mean, no one expects that you're going to have your babies in the NICU. And so not being able to hold your babies and being told when you can hold your babies and having to have someone assist you to hold your babies, and they're hooked up to all of these cords and all of the dinging on the machines and the alarms sounding off, and yeah, just difficult. And after a couple of days, you know, I, after months of living in the hospital, was discharged to go home. And you go home without babies, and there's a nursery that's ready, but there are no babies there. And you're so exhausted, and there's so much guilt that you don't expect. Did I do this? Was there something that I could have done differently? Yeah, just a lot of thoughts. And so boys were in the NICU for 24 days. They did end up getting moved to, like, the transitional NICU, which was actually a new unit at the hospital. It's like the Taj Mahal. It was amazing up there. We ended up getting this huge room, and Caleb and I were able to move in there with the boys and live there with them for their last couple of weeks while they were there in the NICU, and it was amazing. Just, I mean, the assistance we got with learning how to feed them, and you know, I pumped. I tried really hard to breastfeed, but because of the trauma that was done to my body and the amount of blood I lost, I never really hit milk producing mode. So there's a whole nother level of guilt that my body still isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. Why can't I give my babies what they need? But, you know, I guess with twins, bottle feeding was honestly easier, and so it worked out, and things were great. But now looking back, that time in the NICU is actually a really sweet time, I think, which is probably crazy to say. but it really helped prepare us for coming home. And the boys were so healthy, so healthy. They just needed to learn how to eat. That's a skill that is developed around 37 weeks in utero, where they come out just automatically knowing how to suck, swallow, and breathe at the same time. And because they were born at 33 weeks, they had to learn that skill outside of the womb. And so once they were able to do that, and they were taking bottle feeds, and they were able to breathe and swallow and do all of that at the same time, we went home. They were there for 24 days. We came home the day before Caleb's birthday, a week before Christmas, and it was just pure magic, just everything we had hoped for. And they have been the best babies, and they bring so much joy, and they're so smart. And I'm just so thankful, because the outcome could have been so different. And I don't feel like our outcome is the norm. And yeah, I'm just so grateful. And so to all of you who along the way encouraged us and brought meals to us and prayed for us and just were good friends to us, thank you so much. And so when people, ask if we're going to have more, when people thought that my exciting announcement was about having more babies, I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. There's some stuff you don't know. And so to think about having more kids is a little scary. We don't know that that's something that we're going to want for our family later on, but we know that if we get there, then we'll know in our hearts that it's the right thing to do. But right now we're just in a season of just breathing and enjoying and being so grateful for the life that we've been given. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to get emotional looking at my notes. Sorry, y'all. So coming home from, September to end of December being in the hospital, you're just in like this mode of being so grateful that you're home. And I not once thought about that at some point I was going to have to deal with everything that happened to us. There was a lot that I've shared with you that we still don't really talk to people about. We kind of came up with this safe script of what our story was. And it's just been recently that, at least for me, I've been able to look our experience in the face and be honest about it and share the really difficult parts. And this comes from a really, really scary and painful season of panic and anxiety. And I know that it still may be a little taboo to talk about. I'm so thankful that people are talking about it more. I did not have postpartum depression. I was just so thankful to be home and to be alive that my postpartum journey, I think, is a little bit different than some. So mine was not considered postpartum depression, but at 6 months postpartum, almost to the day, thankfully the boys were napping. I was sitting on the couch and I was helping plan a baby shower for one of my friends. And I have my planner out and I'm just kind of making my list of, things that I need to get for the shower and just all the details. And it came out of nowhere and I felt like I was dying. The room started to spin. I got this awful pain in my head. I thought that I was going to have an aneurysm, or I called Caleb in hysterics and told him that I was dying. I was shaking. I was sobbing uncontrollably. It was like the most terrifying feeling I have ever felt in my entire life. And thankfully, he had an idea as to what was happening, and so he was very calm, and he said, "Lauren, I think you're having a panic attack." And so he worked with me to calm me down, but it lasted for 2 hours, and he ended up having to come home from work, and it was horrifying, and I didn't know why it was happening. And they continued to happen, and at this point in time, I started to have severe, debilitating anxiety, especially at nighttime. It's almost like my mom calls it sundowners. So when it would start to get around dinner time and the sun would go down, I would start to get very afraid of going to bed. I didn't worry about the boys. I know some women, it's very common for them to worry about their babies going to sleep and wanting to watch them and make sure they're okay the whole time. I was terrified that I was going to die and that I was going to leave my babies. And so I would get so scared of going to sleep because I was afraid that I wouldn't wake up. And so I would just lay there with my thoughts, which were terrible, terrible thoughts, scary thoughts. And sometimes I would wake Caleb up, but other times I wouldn't, because I was so angry at myself for feeling the way that I was feeling and for being so afraid. And as a follower of Jesus, like, why can't I trust you enough to take care of me? And so over the course of a few weeks, it just, I didn't want to leave the house. It was awful. And then I just kind of hit a patch where things started to get better. But during this season, Caleb encouraged me to start therapy. And I think because of how I was raised, nothing against my parents at all, but really small town, in a church, and we still go to church. I'm not bashing the church. But I think that I had this mentality that if I believe that Jesus is taking care of me, then I should be able to pray my way out of this. And it doesn't work that way. And so he encouraged me to go to therapy. And finally, I said yes. I was very hesitant because I felt like therapy meant that I was weak and I couldn't do it. But here's the truth. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it on my own. But I was encouraged that going to therapy was strength, that admitting that I needed help to some extent was something to be proud of and nothing to be ashamed of. And so I started going to therapy. I'm still in therapy. I go once a week. Side note about therapy, I think everyone should go. Whether you think you have big issues or small issues or no issues or whatever, I think that it's the best thing that I've ever done. And I'm so thankful to have found a therapist who I feel like she's a second mom. And she's not afraid to shoot straight with me, but she knows the good, the bad, and the ugly about me, and it's just so helpful. And so I started going to therapy, and I still cringe when I say this out loud, but I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I had a really hard time hearing that. And again, I still feel uncomfortable when I say that out loud, because in my mind I think, no. People who go to war and witness death and awful types of destruction and just the ugliest parts of the world, they're the ones with PTSD, not me. Not me. Like, I just had a difficult pregnancy. No, I don't have PTSD. That sounds so dramatic. But here's the thing. It's trauma. And trauma comes in many forms. And it has taken me a long time to accept what our story is, and that it was really difficult. And also, everything's relative. What was difficult for us is not difficult for someone else. What's difficult for you may not be difficult for someone else, but that doesn't at all take away from the pain and the trauma that it causes us. It doesn't lessen it. Just because I wasn't fighting in Afghanistan, doesn't take away from the fact that I was fighting for the lives of my children. And honestly, for my life, that I would even be here to raise them. So trauma is trauma is trauma. And it's okay to admit that you struggle and you have things that you're needing to work through. I also did not want to take medication. Well, guess what, folks? I do. It's a very small dosage, but it, along with therapy, has just helped so much. There are so many things that just kind of get wonky sometimes after you have babies, or even like just in seasons of life. And sometimes we just need a little help, and that's okay. And it could be something that you need to be on for forever. It could be a very short-term thing, but there's nothing wrong with therapy. There's nothing wrong with needing help. And that has also been a long time coming for me to admit that. So much guilt and shame that I wasn't strong enough to do it on my own. We're not meant to do it on our own. So please, please, if you are in a season of life where you just feel like you're drowning and you just can't get your head above water, please reach out. Reach out to me. Even if you don't live in Orlando, I will help you find someone to speak with. I will let you know what medication I'm taking. I will give you all the details that you need. But there are resources out there, and you do not have to struggle. You're not doing a good service for yourself, and you're not doing a good service for those around you. You deserve better. Your spouse deserves better. Your children deserve better. Your friends deserve better. Please do not be afraid to ask for help. And if you're worried about someone judging you, come to me. It's a judge-free zone. Trust me. There is nothing I feel like I could hear these days, struggles, dark parts of people's lives that I could hear, and there would be judgment here, because I have lived out some really dark moments, and no one should ever have to feel that way. I'm gonna have to look at my notes again. So, started going to therapy, started taking some medication. Prior to the medication, about, starting around February. So I've been in therapy at this point, not taking medication at this point. The panic and the anxiety came back triple, quadruple what it was. I was terrified to leave my house. There was one Saturday where me and Caleb and the boys and my in-laws went to get lunch, and we were going to go take the boys to the zoo. I hadn't been out of the house in days. I was smack in the middle of just every moment of every day being terrified that I was dying. And I was having awful headaches. And in my mind, I had created that my headaches were because I was going to die of a brain tumor, or I was going to die of an aneurysm, or any day, any moment, I was going to die and leave my children behind. And it terrified me to the point where I could not function. Caleb was having to stay home from work because I couldn't function. And so we go to lunch. I'm quiet during lunch. I feel overly stimulated. I'm having a hard time, and I can just feel it building. And I remember telling myself in my head, Lauren, you're in a public place. You got to get it together. And so we get to the car to go to the zoo, and I have a panic attack. Caleb and his dad took the boys to the zoo. My mother-in-law came home with me, and I just slept. When I say that it was ruling my life, it was ruling my life to the point of just... I remember sitting in my car one day listening to a podcast about anxiety and just sobbing because I felt like this was going to be my life forever. And I heard the person on the other end of the podcast saying, I felt like this was going to be my life forever, but it's not. And I remember saying, well, that may have been the case for you. Here comes my cat. But that's not going to be the case for me. This is my life, and it's going to kill me. It was terrifying. Debbie, please stop. Absolutely terrifying. But I continued with therapy. At this point, I went on some medication. I started seeing a holistic doctor to try and get some nutritional factors taken care of. I had extensive amounts of blood work done to make sure that there wasn't an imbalance of some sort. And believe it or not, everything came back. And they were like, you're the picture of health. Everything's great. My headaches were caused from tension. I was putting so much stress on myself, and I was in such a season of anxiousness and fear that I was just causing myself to have the worst tension, anxiety, headaches. And I'm not going to sit here and say that things changed overnight. They didn't. I feel like, so from February, now we're almost into August, just within the last 6 weeks, I feel like I have fully gotten myself back. I realize that I don't think negative thoughts all the time. I don't live in fear all the time. I'm able to process things better, so things that might have freaked me out or made me very anxious or nervous before, they don't. I can still recognize that something is a little scary or worrisome, but it doesn't dictate now how I respond in a fearful manner. And if I'm being honest, I think that it's a mix of, through therapy and facing my demons head on, I've learned how to cope and manage, and I've recognized what my triggers are. And I think that it's the medication as well, very small dosage that it's an SSRI. It helps balance out your serotonin levels. My happy, balanced, easygoing was just, and so now, I've been able to balance some things out, and I feel so much better. Please don't be afraid to seek help. There are resources out there. And so I know that you're probably thinking, okay, what's this big announcement that she has? And it's probably not at all anything that you think it's going to be. And the reason that I'm going to share this with you, and I wanted to share it along with this journey that I've been on in our pregnancy experience, is because it's all a part of it. It's like one big puzzle, and all the pieces fit together. And now that I'm a mom, I'm no longer a teacher, and now that I'm a mom, and I'm in a very different season of life, and for the last 20 months, my whole world, and it will always be my boys. I love being a mom more than anything in the whole world. I love being a mom. But I think moms out there can also relate that at some point you start to wonder who you are outside of being a mom. And you wonder, is this all that I am? I get to 5 o'clock and I haven't even brushed my teeth for the day, and I used to be in much better shape, and I used to wear makeup every day, and I used to have interest. And for months now, Caleb has been asking, what's going on with you? What are your interests? And, when we'd have date nights, and up until now, I haven't had any. I haven't known what to say. I haven't known what, outside of being a mom and the boys, what brings me joy? What do I like doing? And so through my journey of battling anxiety and working through our season of pregnancy, being in therapy and just kind of finding myself again. I'm sure if you follow along with me on Instagram, I love cooking. And, you know, about a year ago, I guess, you know, we really, you know, did some research and became interested in a clean lifestyle. And so it's very easy for me to start with food. I kind of like being a homemaker. I like staying at home and cooking and cleaning and all of that. Maybe blame it on my southern roots. I don't know. So it's very easy for me to start with cooking, very easy for me to follow recipes and read a book, you know, Whole30 or a paleo book or whatever. And so then as time has gone on, you know, really wanting to kind of make a whole lifestyle switch to not just clean eating, but getting rid of toxic cleaning products, and just realizing that we're given a lot of misinformation, and we deserve better than that. We deserve quality, whether it's in our food, our cleaning products, our skincare and makeup, and I mean, we just deserve that. And so over the last few months, a lot of you know just from a few posts that I've done that I've been using beauty counter products. I've always loved makeup. I had a really difficult time with acne. I shared a little bit with acne in high school. My senior year especially, it was awful. I looked like a monster. It was terrible cystic acne. I ended up trying everything out there, from all the creams and pills to laser treatment. Nothing helped my skin. I eventually went on Accutane, which cleared it up, but was miserable in the process. But left terrible scarring. I still have always had very uneven skin, been very, very self-conscious about my skin. Never went without makeup, ever. Didn't matter if I was going to the beach or to the gym or whatever. I always had makeup on. But this new season of motherhood, well, you know, I can't really wear makeup that much. It's just not a huge priority these days. But quality products have become a priority for me. And so I went to a little social that a friend had about 9 months ago or so, ordered a few beauty counter products, really liked them, ordered a few more. And as crazy as it sounds, it has brought me a lot of joy, and it is so interesting to me. And right now there's a huge movement in Washington for getting stricter regulation and more laws about the products that are in skincare and cosmetics, and there's a lot of junk out there, and like I said, we deserve better than that. And this whole switch to a clean lifestyle, just, I really love it, and I have found passion again and interest again, and I've been wanting for a while to do something with that, which is why I like to share on social media, but also just really wanting to find something that I can do other than cleaning my house and fixing food. And so with that, I am now a beauty counter consultant. Now, before you like swipe through because you're like, oh my gosh, she's just trying to sell me something. No, I'm doing this because it matters to me, and it has been a really long road for me to get to a place where I have interest again. And there have been quite a few of you that have reached out to me and commented on my skin, or just interested in what I'm using. And I mean, I appreciate that so much, because as small as a thing as skincare and makeup might be, it's helped me feel like myself again. And it's given me confidence that I haven't had before, and confidence in different ways now that I'm a mom and my body doesn't look the way that it used to. So yeah, there it is. I would love nothing more than to share with you the information that I have, but I also get very turned off when people just randomly approach you about things like this. I've never been one to really do this whole thing or be into it, but I'm passionate about clean living, and this was a great way for me to get involved in that, and a great way for me to finally have the energy and excitement about something after all of these months of just being in the darkest season of my life. So yeah, just know that I'm here if you have questions about it. And along with that, I just want to say thank you for over the last few months just being so supportive and encouraging, and more than just beauty counter or therapy or this or that. I think that it's just so important for us to be vulnerable and honest. Not that we need to like be negative all the time if we're, in a difficult season, but social media just really makes you feel like crap sometimes. You think everyone has it together, that things are perfect in other people's lives, and they're not. And I think that this is a great time for people to be real with information that's out there. And I think people value transparency. I know I do. And so don't think that it's all giggles and fun over here and healthy meals. I mean, you saw my Papa John's post the other night. Like, I love a good piece of pizza, and sometimes you just need processed cheese. Let's be honest. But yeah, I'm just grateful for this community. I'm grateful for so many of you who have followed along with us and have been so supportive and encouraging. And whether it's beauty counter or anxiety or postpartum issues or pregnancy issues, or you just need a friend, I'm here. I really love social media for that, and I'm thankful that so many of you, enjoy following along with my family, and are such good friends to me. So thank you. If you have specific questions or anything you would like for me to share more on, please don't hesitate to ask me. I love writing, and so I've been writing. I am planning on starting a blog at some point, but mom life, twins, craziness. But yeah, there's such beauty that comes from difficulty, and so thank you for accepting me for who I am and for listening. Yeah, just really grateful. Thanks.